Hello, Virgo. So, okay, stop scrolling. I need your full attention for this one because what I'm about to share isn't just another reading. This is about a shift happening in your energetic field right now that's about to change how you experience joy. Don't skip ahead. Stay with me. Let's begin. So, your internal frequency is recalibrating to a channel you haven't accessed in years, maybe ever. Not because you weren't capable of tuning into it, but because everything in your environment, your circumstances, your relationships, your own beliefs about what you deserve has been broadcasting static that drowned out the signal. But the static is clearing, and what's emerging underneath is pure. This isn't about forcing positivity. This isn't toxic optimism or spiritual bypassing. This is about your nervous system finally finding a frequency where happiness isn't performance, where joy isn't something you have to manufacture through gratitude journals and affirmations that feel like lies. Let me describe what happens when your natural frequency gets unblocked. Most people are walking around tuned to stations that broadcast suffering, not because they're masochistic, but because suffering is what they know, what they were raised in, what feels familiar enough to be mistaken for home. They've been conditioned to frequencies of lack, anxiety, waiting for the other shoe to drop, expecting disappointment, bracing for betrayal. And those frequencies become self fulfilling. You tune to scarcity, you perceive scarcity everywhere. You tune to threat, everything registers as dangerous. You tune to unworthiness, you miss every signal that contradicts that belief. Some people have been on those frequencies so long they think that's just reality, that life is hard and then you die, that happiness is for other people or fictional or temporary at best. But what if reality isn't fixed? What if your experience of reality is just reflection of whatever frequency you're currently tuned to? And what if right now, today, this week, this period, your frequency is shifting? Like a radio dial turning, moving away from stations that broadcast fear and limitation toward stations broadcasting possibility and ease. Let's pause here. This reflection invites you to consider, what if your default emotional frequency has been set to a channel you never consciously chose? Maybe you inherited it, absorbed it from family who operated on frequencies of worry and lack, who taught you that happiness is suspicious, that good things don't last, that trusting joy means inviting its opposite. So you learned to stay braced, stay defended, keep happiness at arm's length because getting too comfortable with it meant you'd be destroyed when it inevitably left. Or maybe life taught you through enough disappointments that hope started feeling naive, through enough betrayals that trust started feeling stupid, through enough losses that attachment started feeling like volunteering for pain. And you tuned yourself to frequencies of protection, of emotional minimalism, of keeping expectations low so reality can't drop you from heights you never climbed to. Some people call this being realistic, being mature, being prepared, but it's just being tuned to frequencies that broadcast limitation and calling that wisdom. And you're about to discover that wisdom isn't cynicism, that protection through emotional shutdown isn't safety, that the frequency you've been on isn't serving you even though it's familiar. This reflection invites you to consider, have you been confusing emotional numbness with emotional maturity. There's something specific about what this new frequency actually feels like. It's not manic positivity, not the frantic energy of someone trying to convince themselves everything's fine when it's clearly not, not the performance of happiness for audience. It's quieter than that, steadier, like finding the exact right temperature where your body can just relax. Stop working so hard to regulate. Stop bracing against discomfort that isn't actually present. You might notice small things delighting you that normally wouldn't register. Sunlight hitting a surface in particular way. Strangers smile. Song that makes your chest open instead of your mind analyze. These aren't new occurrences. These things were always happening. But you were tuned to frequency that filtered out pleasure because pleasure felt dangerous or irrelevant or like distraction from vigilance you thought was necessary. Some people experience frequency shifts as disorienting initially. Like, why am I feeling good when my circumstances haven't changed? Like, happiness without external justification must be delusion or denial. But circumstances don't create frequency. Frequency creates experience of circumstances. Two people in identical situations can have completely different experiences based entirely on what frequency they're tuned to. You're starting to tune to frequency where same circumstances that felt heavy last month suddenly feel manageable, where problems that felt insurmountable suddenly feel like puzzles you're actually interested in solving. Not because problems changed, because your relationship to problems changed, because you're perceiving from different frequency that doesn't amplify threat and minimize resource the way your old frequency did. This reflection invites you to consider, what if your circumstances aren't the problem? Your frequency just made them feel impossible. Let me describe what starts happening when you stabilize on this new frequency. Synchronicities increase, not because universe suddenly cares about you more, but because you're finally tuned to channel where meaningful coincidences were always broadcasting, but you couldn't perceive them through static of fear and scarcity. You start noticing opportunities you were walking past daily, connections you were too defended to recognize, possibilities you were too resigned to consider. Not because they're new, because you're finally on frequency that allows them to register. People respond to you differently, not because you're performing different, but because frequency is contagious. When you're broadcasting ease, people around you relax. When you're broadcasting possibility, people start seeing their own possibilities differently. Some people will be drawn to your new frequency, will want to be around the version of you that's no longer vibrating stress and limitation, will find your presence refreshing in ways they might not be able to articulate. But others will be repelled. Your new frequency will make them uncomfortable, will trigger their own awareness of how stuck they are on frequencies they've normalized, will challenge them just through your existence on different channel. And those people might accuse you of being fake or spiritually bypassing or in denial because they can't imagine that happiness is available without dramatic external change. Can't conceive of frequency shift creating experiential shift. Let them be uncomfortable. Their discomfort is their own frequency revealing itself, has nothing to do with validity of your shift. This reflection invites you to consider, are you willing to stay on your new frequency even when people from your old frequency judge you for it? There's something critical about what threatens to pull you back to old frequency. Habit. Your nervous system has grooves, patterns of worry and bracing and expecting worst that feel like home even when home was never actually safe. And those patterns will keep trying to reassert themselves. You'll wake up one morning back on the fear channel, not because anything bad happened, just because your system defaulted to familiar, even though familiar is what you're trying to leave. Some people interpret those defaults as proof the shift wasn't real, as evidence they can't maintain new frequency, as confirmation they're just pretending and reality is actually the suffering they're more familiar with. But defaults don't mean failure, they just mean you're in transition. And transition requires conscious retuning multiple times before new frequency becomes new default. Engine or other people's frequencies. You're on your new channel and someone you love is broadcasting crisis or drama or victimhood so loud you can't help but tune to their frequency to meet them there. And suddenly you're back in old patterns, absorbing their stress, taking on their limitations, resonating with their fear because that's what you know how to do, and their need feels more important than your frequency. But you can't save anyone by lowering your frequency to match theirs. Can't help anyone by abandoning your channel to join them in static. Best thing you can do is stay on your frequency and invite them to join you there. This reflection invites you to consider whose frequency are you abandoning your own to accommodate. Let me be direct about what you need to do to stabilize on this frequency. First, notice when you're on it and when you're not. Develop awareness of what your happiness frequency actually feels like in your body versus what your old fear frequency feels like. Happiness frequency might feel like chest expansion, like breathing is easier, like shoulders drop naturally, like face softens without effort. Fear frequency might feel like chest constriction, like breathing is shallow, like shoulders creep toward ears, like jaw clenches without awareness. Noticing the somatic difference helps you catch frequency shifts before they fully take hold, helps you retune before you're completely back on old channel. Second, protect your frequency intentionally, not through toxic positivity that denies problems, but through conscious choice about what you tune into. Limit exposure to people and content that broadcast frequencies you're trying to leave. Not forever necessarily, but while you're stabilizing, while new frequency is still fragile. Third, practice returning. When you notice you've shifted back to old frequency, don't shame yourself. Just tune back, like adjusting radio dial, gently, repeatedly, until new frequency becomes more automatic than old one. Some people expect one shift to be permanent, expect to find happiness frequency once and stay there effortlessly. But frequency maintenance requires practice, requires choosing repeatedly until choice becomes default. Fourth, let happiness be enough justification. You don't need reason to be happy. Don't need circumstances to improve first. Don't need to earn it or deserve it or justify it to anyone, including yourself. Happiness on this frequency isn't reward for achieving. It's just available channel you can tune to regardless of external conditions. You remain in complete control of what frequency you operate on. You can return to old channels or stabilize on new one. Can let defaults win or practice retuning. The power is yours. It always has been. You may notice reading this has created shift in how you feel right now. Maybe lighter, maybe skeptical because this sounds too simple, maybe recognition that yes, you have been on wrong frequency and it's been exhausting. Whatever it is, honor it, take what resonates, softly release the rest, trust yourself. Before we close, I want to ask you something. When you imagine operating from a frequency of genuine happiness. Does that feel possible or like fantasy? Drop it in the comments honestly. And this, what would have to change for you to believe happiness doesn't require perfect circumstances? This frequency will make you very, very happy. Not because it's magic or because it changes external reality immediately, but because it changes your experience of reality, changes what you perceive, what registers, what feels possible versus impossible. And experience is everything. Two people in same circumstances can have completely different qualities of life based entirely on what frequency they're operating from. You're shifting frequencies. The channel is clearing. The static is fading. Not eventually, right now, already in progress. Trust yourself with this. Trust that happiness isn't something you have to earn through suffering first. Trust that you can tune to different frequency without circumstances changing first. Trust that your experience of reality is more flexible than you've been taught to believe. See you in the next one. And listen, frequency isn't about what's happening to you, it's about what channel you're perceiving what's happening from. Same events, completely different experience. Stay on the happiness frequency, retune when you drift. Your nervous system is learning a new home. Take care.